What's wrong? Come on, you can tell us.
Adorabat! Tell us!
So if you haven't watched Mao Mao yet and you're interested in seeing if the show is worth it, I personally think it is. I watched every episode I can find, and I honestly think the show is something that I can invest a lot of time into. Thus, I do want to talk about how this episode, no shortcuts, dodged a major bullet when it came to Mao Mao. So let's get into it. This episode is sponsored by my King Alpha poster, created by @DynamoTune on Twitter. I decided to link these together in my run about talking about clothing/gear based episodes, and honestly, this is just a cool poster. I wanted to make some merch that was actually more than just my name. I feel like when YouTubers make merch like that, it's very basic. I want to make sure if you're supporting me, you have the best designs to choose from. I went through 20, 30, 40 different designs, and I got the 8 best in my opinion. I mean, look at this. My favorite part is just how the bamboo staff bounces the light towards you. So if you want a poster or you want to see the other designs, go to alphaj.show/merch. So the episode starts off with action. Something I was nervous about upon watching the first episode. I noted that the action in the first episode seemed to happen in a very quick way, whether ending very quickly or being shown in highly detailed still images. While I don't have too much of a problem with it, I did theorize that very quick, short to the point fight scenes would devalue certain aspects of building villains and monsters and rivalries. How would we know if a monster is truly powerful if they can defeat Mao Mao in 20 seconds, then get defeated in 20 seconds? So here we do see more action, albeit it's with the comedy henchman alongside Orangutan. While I do enjoy the fact that this scene here builds towards what the end will be, something that you wouldn't know until you watch the end, it did provide better rewatch value than other episodes. I do want to focus on Adorabat though.
Themselves up?
Wow.
Yeah. Hey, let's attack them while they're down.
Okay.
I didn't help at all.
So completely glossing over the fact that he did massively help towards the villain detriment because, of course, he wouldn't see it as helping, the bullet I'm referencing is Adorabat's character. If we are to put in the standards of a good character just after good character design and voice acting, then Adorabat would be a fantastic character. However, unless you don't care about deep or engaging characters, that isn't the case for many. Characters have more than that. They have motivations, they have challenges, personal flaws, history, and while yes, this is the 3rd episode, and you cannot realistically have too much of all of that already, recognize that I'm speaking in retrospect after watching 10 episodes. I've noticed this pattern with Adorabat, that her character is actually rather thin compared to her peers, and it's not just her. So when I thought about why Adorabat is just the cute one, when everything else in the show seems to be building up to something, I was very confused. In Ultra Clops and Breakup, 2 other episodes, we actually dive into Badger Clops, giving him motivations of not being just a sidekick, but also some history that he wasn't always with Mao Mao, and they balance each other out, with Badger Clops' honest humility, and Mao Mao's drive and determination. In Bao Bao's revenge, we get Mao Mao's personal flaws, with being ultra possessive, and history about why he doesn't have a tail. We don't get much with Adorabat besides being cute and wanting to be a hero, thus being impatient and naive. Now one counter argument I think about is that Adorabat's a child, and their role within the show is to gain the experience, the history, the pitfalls within the show, through her adventures with Mao Mao and Badger Clops, similar to your Star Versus, your Steven Universes, and your OKKOs. And while I'd lean back in my chair very unsatisfied with that begrudgingly tried and true conclusion, I noticed something when I compare my experiences with those shows and this show, and I want to point out specific points in this episode to give proof to those things. So Adorabat's in a grumpy mood and rants about how she isn't able to keep up with Mao Mao and Badger Clops. This episode cleverly displays how Adorabat is heavily impatient by abruptly cutting off Mao Mao in the middle of stating that Adorabat will need to train for long periods of time in order to reach the skill level of Mao Mao or Badger Clops. Showing and not telling, it's still important. So in an effort to not get Adorabat's wings cut off to become a hero, the episode repeats the fact that
there are no shortcuts. None!
And I noticed that these episodes are written in a way that you're supposed to catch these tiny moments and use them to figure out what will happen in the end. Some may call it walking you up to the door, but I digress. So, rather than getting a robotic replacement, Adora Bat gets armor to place above her peg leg, which leads into a battle where she destroys more of the town than the monster. Although initially being called a hero, the town rips Adora Bat apart for destroying things that they worked on or enjoyed. Mao Mao then repeats that,
There are no shortcuts to becoming a hero.
which leads into Adora Bat slowly showing that she cannot control the powers given to her. So remember earlier when I was talking about the problem with Adora Bat fitting in with the archetype of other shows' main characters? Well, this scene here explains what I mean very well.
I just want to be cool and actiony as soon as possible!
Okay, that's it. We have to get rid of that awful machine.
Snowball!
What? Adora Bat! Come back!
Please forgive me!
So if you were a betting man, you would see that this scene is setting up for them to meet towards the end. You know, status quo and whatnot. So let me explain in detail why this isn't as compelling as when other shows do this in a similar vein. So Adora Bat's archetype is the young, plucky, inexperienced kid who wants to save the world, while being very impulsive, impatient, and naive. So basically many characters you've seen in shows from this past decade alone. Now that by itself isn't too much of a problem, even if you were to bring up the variety in main characters argument. You see, as much as I'd like to summarize all of my problems as we've seen this before, that isn't a good argument. There are young people or people who don't watch a lot of cartoons that are definitely being introduced to this archetype, and thus to them it's new, which means the variety argument doesn't really work. But what I have noticed is that this episode reminds me a lot of Chowder, specifically Cream Puff Hands. In that episode, Chowder gets very impatient because he wants to help out now and not after training after months and months of time to be a good chef. He gets an overgrown hand and decides to help people, having it actually work in the beginning. However, as time went on, his ambitions grew and so did his hand due to him. And unfortunately, the help he was doing caused more harm, leading into him being forced to lose the hand. Now from our rewatch, I actually enjoy that episode, and that episode isn't much different from this, so what's the problem? Am I just unjustifiably putting a lot of pressure on this episode? Is nostalgia blocking the way? No. I've come to a very solid conclusion. It's because that episode highlights Chowder himself, the character. This episode highlights what Adora Bat should do to get the story to work, and those are two very different things. This episode doesn't tell me much about Adora Bat, whereas that episode told me a lot about Chowder. All this tells me is that Adora Bat is impatient, something I already know, and something that you would know watching multiple episodes of them telling you the exact same thing. So obviously the episode will end with Adora Bat learning to be patient. That's it. However, when it comes to new or funny or substantial things we get, when it's not about Adora Bat, we get the comedy of Mao Mao and Badgerclops not being on the same wavelength when it comes to shortcuts. We get the townspeople developing more than just being discount Care Bears, being given jobs. And we get the villain's overarching plot of trying to get their ship back up.
Come on out, you pirate filth! Come on out and fight me!
It's pretty clear that Adora Bat is going to lose the fight, and unlike Chowder, Adora Bat by herself isn't funny, but rather the more serious characters, like Orangu Snake, like Mao Mao, giving humor throughout episodes. So with not as much comedy, barely enough action, it's clear that this show is going for a story-focused direction, and that'd be fine and all, but to have Adora Bat lead it leads for very dull episodes because of how much her character is being held back. It may sound blunt, but Adora Bat doesn't have anything interesting going on besides the surface level stuff. And I fear that that's going to hold the show back due to this archetype, because my problems don't appear in other shows that do this archetype. When I watched Star Vs, I got interesting Star moments that had nothing to do with the adorable Hellraiser that she is. When I watched Gravity Falls, I got more than the wacky forest humor within the first 10 episodes. When I watched Steven Universe, I did get more out of Steven than his goofy, wacky archetype within the 10 episodes. And when I watched OKKO, I got more out of KO than his archetype. I don't have that here. There isn't more than 2 moments in this entire season so far that isn't the common archetype that Adora Bat has to follow. And just off of speculation, I think the only reason her character would be able to coast off of this is based off of the hope that in the future, when things do get quote serious, then her character will reach its potential, or the fact that Adora Bat's a cute character and no one cares. I think it's completely fair to hope, but personally personally, I think it's unreasonable for me to tell you guys that maybe sometime in season 2 or 3 that we may get a Dorbat in full form, giving us something more than impatient, cute, and naive, because I value your time, and also I'm not on the team, so I don't know. Let me put it to you this way. I think Poof is a cute character. I couldn't tell you many interesting moments his character has had though.
Looks like we need a Dorabat's permission to give up this machine. So how about it? You join us with that Mega Mech, or we take it!
So through a betrayal to Mao Mao and Badgerclops, Orangi Snake and his team develop a mecha sort of gear that makes them super powerful as a team. It's also made clear that this is more powerful than the combined efforts of Mao Mao and Badgerclops. So we get your pretty cliche moment, which is to me a little dull but it gets the job done, and we get the scene where Adorabat leaves her armor. The problem is, then the episode shows us that Adorabat simply leaves the gear there for anyone to use. Now, rather than going on a tirade about how that seems like lazy and unclear writing, because then, either Ratarang should have been electrocuted for not being the owner, like they shown before, or Adorabat could have just left at any moment and thus was never in any true danger. Either way, this episode, like a few others, just sweeps it under the rug of the archetype. Oh, Adorabat's just naive. Fine, even if I were to believe that, then explain.
Hey, silly face! How about another game of catch me?
You get back here! What the no! You fool!
Okay, so earlier I assumed that Adorabat didn't see it as helping. So why would her character use the exact same move if she didn't see it as herself helping earlier, but rather running away? It was clear as day that it appears that her character associated what she did there with helping. But if that's the case, then why would she be mad then? Because the episode makes it clear that it's about the helping. It's not about the power. The story is written that it's about the power, but they clearly state that it's about the helping. But again, you can sweep this under the rug as part of her character's archetype. Oh, they're just naive. It'd be fine if it were one thing, but every episode is building up this. Can we get something more with their character than just a cute naive archetype that we've seen in countless of other shows? Because it's clear that besides that, the show is really good, and this is the bullet that I'm talking about. Even if I hand wave the problems that Adorabat has, everything else about the show is great. I just feel like this reliance on the tried and true character that we've seen in Adventure Time and all the other shows I talked about years ago, it's just getting old.
So I can keep it?
Yeah, you could totally keep it.
Just keep sitting on my foot. Oh, no, oh, gee, oh.
Despite this, it was a good fight, and that was a funny ending, because it's clear that Mao Mao wanted to make Adorabat feel better for not understanding that it truly does take time, and that there are no shortcuts. It's heartwarming that Mao Mao would do this, with a layer of comedy, because Badgerclops does frequently get thrown under the bus to protect Adorabat's feelings, but he's well aware of that, and has a thick skin to deal with that. The episode ends on Adorabat's mad face, and that was no shortcuts. A pretty, decent episode of the show, and I will go back to bigging up the show, because there are really fantastic episodes to talk about. I just wanted to get my biggest gripe with the first season out of the way. And also again, alphaj.show/merch for your lovely merch needs. It's the only place to get official Alpha J merch, and you'd be helping me out a lot. If you really like this episode, you should go back and check out my first Mao Mao video, Did Mao Mao Start Off Well? Or the previous episode in Merch Week, Fairly Odd Parents, Fairly Odd Con. I'd highly recommend checking that out as well. Special thanks to the patrons of July, and until next time, take care. Alpha out.